asked him to open our marriage, so he flushed our wedding rings down the toilet and
While I was getting my psychology degree, I studied different theories about sexual behavior and how we could explain its diverse manifestations, especially the ones which aren't considered socially appropriate. What we consider as a standard romantic and/or sexual relationship is quite different from 50 years ago, 100 years ago, and so on. An example of that dynamic is how in the 1920s, and even a few decades later, we wouldn't even consider romance and sex as separate things, because it was expected of you in most parts of the world to only develop your sexual interests after you got married and only to that person. The only type of sexual encounters outside of the marriage sphere was with sex workers, affairs, illegitimate relationships, and sometimes all of them at the same time. Today, you can easily have only a sexual relationship with a person without being marginalized by society or considered a degenerate. Some would say that is now the pattern of dating, also known as the hookup culture, motivated by dating apps where you can easily find a sexual partner, but can also be, ironically, a little difficult to find a romantic one there. All of this information dumping seems random on a Reddit post, but you'll soon understand why this topic has returned to my attention and thoughts. Either way, my point is how much romantic and sexual dynamics change over the decades. Things which were once considered transgressive are now even normal to talk about in a work environment. For example, would you stop interacting with a coworker who mentioned being on Tinder during a regular Monday conversation? I'd say you probably wouldn't, because in our time, looking for casual partners isn't a different or rare behavior. 20 years from now, what kind of sexual or romantic behavior will be normalized into our society? Could it be something considered absurd in our present? I recently went through a rough discussion about these topics with my husband. I suggested something he didn't react well to, and it created a weird atmosphere in our relationship. I decided to bring my situation to Reddit as a kind of survey. Generally, people have extremely diverging opinions about subjects such as this, and I wanted to get different perspectives of my situation. My name is Amber. I'm a 27-year-old psychologist, and I'm married to Mark. He's 29 and works with statistics. He's actually very in love with them for some reason. He has a very methodic and cautious personality. We've been together for 4 happy years and married for 2 of those. We have very different yet complementing personalities. I love that about us. Before we met, Mark was in an 8-year-long relationship with his high school sweetheart. This one takes the award for most traumatizing event of his life. On the proposal day, he went to their house during his working hours to organize their date. His plan was to recreate the night they first met, which was at a school camp, so he'd decorate their backyard and pop the question. When Mark got home, he found his girlfriend in bed with one of his best friends. That day, he found out that very often, a certain guest came to their house during his working hours. Mark was completely oblivious about it, only took one romantic plan to get him out of his routine and find out about the affair. He was single for 2 years, having his hope in love completely lost until he met me. At the time, he started working with a close friend of mine, so we ran into each other frequently in bars, birthdays, and other parties. I was the one who asked him out. I fell for Mark because he has a nerdy personality that makes it clear that he's smart, but he was always shy about showing people how smart he actually is, which makes him even hotter. The outdoor activities we all knew he was into made me fall even harder. He wasn't just a statistics expert who doesn't see the daylight, he had hobbies and a social life. How perfect could he be? We started dating and I held back my feelings. It was clear Mark was hesitant about emotional connections after his ex. We followed his natural pace and eventually realized we were both head over heels with each other. He was scared about showing his feelings and being romantic, but the more I showed him how much I appreciated his gestures, the more he did it, and thank God he never stopped. One of our mutual interests is camping and nature in general. We both love doing it apart, so when we got together, it was the perfect match. One day we walked to the top of a hill to watch a meteor shower together. It was one of the most beautiful things I had ever witnessed. That night he proposed to me and I realized Mark was the one I definitely wanted to spend the rest of my life with. My marriage with Mark is a blessing in my life. He treats me better than I could ever expect or imagine. Every single day he finds a way to remind me I'm loved. I try my best to do the same to Mark, but he is amazingly better at it than me. He knows me in a way no one does. I could genuinely say Mark is my soulmate. Before we met, I expected to get married after my 30s, which seemed like the perfect age for it. The perfect moment to settle down after having great experiences in my 20s. I was 23 when we started dating. Since then, he is the only person in my life and is set to be the only for the rest of my life. I started feeling curious about things I could be experiencing. I love being with Mark in all the ways possible. I would never do anything behind his back to hurt him. Ever since we started dating, we promised to be honest with each other about absolutely everything. We only got through our toughest crisis because we were brutally honest to each other. That way we were able to rethink our actions and adjust them. We always made sure to maintain the safe space for honesty, especially if they are things a couple hides from one another. I sort of felt the need to share these feelings with my husband. One night we were having dinner at home and I asked if we could talk. I started with the subjects I studied and mentioned in the begging of this post. We followed a traditional model of relationship, were we traditional people. We were at the end of our 20s behaving in our marriage like our grandparents would want us to, something they didn't achieve themselves and just lied about it. Which finally brings me to one of the ongoing debates about dating culture, non-monogamy and open relationships. In this point of view, sex and love aren't codependent or related at all. Actually, they are related when you're with your partner, but not with other sexual partners, who you only get involved with for sexual purposes, or anything according to the rules you previously established with your partner. Couples tried, a lot failed, some succeeded and combined two lives together and even improved their relationship. People usually choose this type of relationship to adventure with others while still loving their partner. Is it consensual cheating? Is it cheating if it's consensual from all parties? Could it ruin a marriage? Could it save one? There were many questions I intended to share with Mark. I was hoping he'd be open to talk about it with me. His reaction was definitely unexpected. We talked about many different things which we knew our friends tried or stories we heard about other people. I asked if he felt curious to try any of those we discussed. He stopped for a second and started thinking like he had never thought about it before. I guess if I was single eventually I would have tried, but I prefer what we have in our life much more. He had a good answer. I said I also preferred what we had, but I sometimes felt curious about other things. He reacted naturally and asked me about what I was curious about, so I said I had thought about trying an open relationship. He frowned, didn't say anything, but there was a creeped out reaction on his face. I don't know if it can actually work out for us, but it's something some couples our age do. It seems interesting and fun. I kind of lost my speech once he started staring at me like I had suggested we committed a crime. He repeatedly asked me if I was serious. When I said it actually was, he just seemed shocked. This talk happened yesterday. I'm trying my best to remember exactly what we said, but it went kind of like this. Why would you want to open our relationship? Aren't you satisfied with me? Is there anything I can do better? He asked, a little upset. I reassured him there wasn't anything wrong with our relationship, that I loved him very much and this is just an adventure we could try. Look, we're still young, we'll spend the rest of our lives together comfortably, which is amazing because there's no one I'd rather spend the rest of my life with. While we wait for that stage, we can try new things we haven't done in our past relationship. I honestly felt what I was saying. Mark said being cheated is something he had tried in his last relationship and he didn't feel like doing it again. I guess this subject can trigger what he's been through, but in my point of view, it couldn't be the same thing. His ex-girlfriend lied to him, went behind his back, had an affair with someone very close to him, and while all of that happened, she never showed any discontent with how her relationship with Mark was. It's like she was fulfilling a sick fantasy of being with two people at the same time in secret. I had a small curiosity about what was out there. I loved being married, but I had the feeling I settled down early and lost experiences somehow important or just fun to have in your 20s. Finding out we, as a society, practice monogamy only as a social convention, because when we settled it is necessary for our lives. It was simply about how convenient it could be to the political context of the time. The concepts we have of marriage and monogamy are old. When they were settled, it was mainly used to make women keep it in their pants while their husbands were out in brothels. All of that made me realize I hadn't been studying human behavior to reproduce senseless social standards. Even so, if it turned out to be a big mess being with other people, I'd have no problem coming back to my traditional monogamous marriage with the man I love the most. I explained these things to Mark, but he didn't receive them very well. Amber, we made vows to each other. We decided to start a life with only the two of us. I understand all of your historical and psychological analysis, but an open relationship, it's too much and definitely not what we signed up for when we decided to do this. He finished talking, taking my hand and pointing at the golden ring on it. I asked if he ever felt attracted to someone else after we got married because I wouldn't be upset if he did. He looked at me, then he looked at the floor, then at my hands and said, "You know what?" He pulled the ring off my finger, then proceeded to take his ring off his finger. "Is this what you want?" He stood up while holding and showing me our rings. "If you think marriage and monogamy are so oppressive and stopping you from liberating yourself as a woman, fine. Got your message." He walked out of the kitchen, taking our rings with him. I followed him and tried to tell him that wasn't what I meant. Mark never acts this way. He never freaks out and starts yelling just to make a point. I wasn't used to seeing him like that. I'm not acting crazy, he answered after I asked him why he was acting crazy. You want an open relationship, you want to sleep with other people and come home to tell me about it? You want to enjoy your good years with strangers while your husband sits at home wondering when will it be enough for you? If that's your wish, then fine. He opened the bathroom's door, raised the toilet's lid, and when I realized what he was doing, I started yelling for him to stop. In 2 seconds, the rings were thrown in the water, and while I tried to stop him, he flushed it as if they were nothing. I stood there staring at Mark in shock. So you're not acting crazy, I see. He let go a deep breath while listening to what I said, then told me I had what I wished for. Now I could go live my life. What hurt me the most was him saying I still had time to find a jerk who would accept the crazy lifestyle I was suggesting. Maybe there's still time for you to propose to your ex. She'll pretend to only be with you. Lie and go behind your back, but at least you'll be living your perfect monogamy and being oblivious about it. I admit I only said that because he made me upset. Mark turned to me with a death look on his face and walked away until I heard our front door closing, in a little violent sound. It has been 2 days since our fight. Mark is staying with a friend and refuses to talk to me. I called, I texted, I emailed him, I called his mother and everything else I could do. I'm giving him the time he needs, but I have no idea if it was just the heat of the moment or if he'll actually want to get separated. I intend to apologize and tell him it was just a crazy idea. How do I make him forgive me? Do you think he'll still want to be with me? I have no idea what to do. Thanks for the attention, Reddit. I'll get back to you as soon as I have updates. Update. Hello, Reddit. I'm back with updates about the story of my husband flushing our wedding rings down the toilet after I suggested the idea we opened our relationship. Reading your comments and advices cleared my ideas. Some of them helped me to understand the situation better, so I'll share them with you. I should have considered this matter before marrying Mark. Many of you said that. I was very young when we started dating. If I wanted to have other experiences, I should have considered this wish before proceeding with the wedding plans. I admit it seems hurtful suggesting the idea of an open relationship when I agreed to marry him not long ago. I guess I was so silly with love at the time I couldn't actually think about other people. I read comments saying that maybe if I was desiring other people, there could be something I wasn't getting with Mark, which could be sexual or even emotional. I think getting used to married life involves accepting that your relationship will be completely different from the first months in the beginning. I was 23, in love and passionate about my boyfriend. When we decided to get married, those feelings returned and they lasted until our first year of marriage. Of course, I still loved Mark, but there weren't any butterflies in my stomach anymore, which is something normal. I always knew that. Some of you said I was scared of our relationship getting caught in a rut. Therefore, I proposed the most extreme solution, when there are other kinds of more comfortable adventures we could do together, other than an open relationship. I guess I got involved in the idea. You are probably right when saying the idea of an open relationship is better than reality. At the end of the day, I would be spending great and fun moments with strangers when I could be doing the same with my husband. I sent a few texts to Mark, which he took a whole week to reply to. I wanted to give him the space he needed. During our relationship, he always said that when he wants space, he actually needs it to figure things out, and he wished I respected his time. That's what I'm trying to do, but I really don't understand why he is so mad. I want him to see and understand that when I brought up the idea, I didn't mean I desperately needed an open relationship, or else I would do terrible things to myself. It's not having an open relationship or divorce in case he doesn't agree. I just wanted to discuss it with him, see his opinion, think and reflect if it would work out in our lives. If Mark doesn't want an open relationship, then we won't have one. This isn't a decision I can make alone. If he isn't willing to, then I don't want to sacrifice our loving relationship because of a stupid idea I had while reading about it. We are in the beginning of our relationship. We still have a lot to go through together. I've seen couples opening their relationship in their 50s or 60s. I guess it gets boring at that time of life. Mark and I are young. We don't even have kids, and we have a great future ahead of us. I guess the idea of a traditional marriage freaked me out, but now that I don't have my husband around, I realize how much I miss it. A week and a few days after our fight, he finally replied to my texts. He didn't give me much on how things were and what he was feeling, but at least there was a sign of contact showing he was alive. Here's what he said. Hey Amber, you probably know I've been staying with Matt. I still need time to think before we talk. I'm still upset about our fight and don't know exactly how to feel about it. I still need some time, please understand. Thank you for your patience. Bye, Amber. As I said, he didn't give me much, but I was glad to know he's alive. At this point, I could have showed up at his work, his parents' house, and even at Matt's, but I wanted to be respectful. I don't think I should be desperate about it because it's probably just a silly fight we're having and forgetting about it in 6 months, so I hope. Last Friday night, I heard our front door getting unlocked. Mark was home. I was in the living room standing in shock. He seemed surprised when he noticed me there, even though we live there together. He took a deep breath seeing me and said he needed to get some clothes, but he'd be out soon. I tried talking to him while he took his clothes out of the closet and put them, very well folded and organized, in his bag. He was clearly trying to get it over with so that he could leave as soon as possible. Mark answered all my questions vaguely every time he looked at me. He turned his face around as if it was something he shouldn't be watching. That felt horrible. My own husband didn't want to look at me. I wanted to break down in tears in front of him, but I needed to be strong. He got everything he needed and almost left running to his car. When he crossed the living room, I asked if he was ever coming back. He just answered, "I'll try." Update. Hello again. It's been 2 weeks since my last update, and a lot of things have happened. I'll break it down to you, and remember, opinions are appreciated. Maybe one thing that can come out off this mess is a research theme about romantic and sexual behavior, but Mark definitely wouldn't agree on being the subject of study. A few days after Mark showed up at home, I got a call from Matt's girlfriend, the friend Mark has been staying with. She mentioned they went out together with some other friends. When they asked him where I was, he simply explained out fight to them word by word. The subjects I mentioned, the infamous open relationship, the questions I made him, the moment he flushed our wedding rings, and even what I said to him about his ex. He talked about absolutely everything. He outed us to all of his friends. She even said it didn't sound like Mark at all, which I agreed with because he was always discreet about our business. I guess for some reason he didn't have anything to hide anymore. I felt betrayed, and he was out there talking about me as if I had betrayed him, when I simply suggested something that didn't even happen. I swear to God, hearing open relationship being said gives me a headache. If I knew it would be this psychological hell, I would have never even mentioned it. She also said he doesn't know if he wants to get divorced, but according to his words, he can't stand to look at me anymore. You can't even imagine how delightful it was to hear that. After she hung up, I immediately picked up my phone and texted him. I don't understand what is happening to you. You never acted like this. Why can't you just talk to me about what you're feeling instead of spreading our business to all of your friends? I don't care about your space anymore if you don't come home today and talk about it with me. I'll call my lawyer tomorrow so we can start our divorce. You're my husband. You have to talk to me and can't just walk away when I don't act the way you expect me to. I sent it. He saw it immediately, but he never showed up. I waited up all night crying. I even expected him the next day. Mark didn't show up then and also the rest of the week. He didn't even reply to my text. I waited days for him, but he never showed up. So I had to do what I threatened to, but didn't actually think I'd have to use it. The divorce papers are getting here any day now, and guess what? No news from Mark. I don't think I had ever felt a greater pain, especially knowing he's doing it on purpose. He could come here, call me a bitch, and say he'd rather die than still be married to me. Instead, he decided to say nothing and abandon me. He broke my heart, but only because I broke his, so I don't know exactly what to feel. Be careful with what you talk about with your significant other. I guess you should learn from my mistake and not suggest things they might be extremely triggered by. I didn't know he was going to react this way. Learned something new about him, and we're just about to get a divorce. How ironic. Thanks for following my story, Reddit. Things didn't turn out well, but I guess you are used to that.
Ever since I met Laura, I always believed that a bond built on trust was unbreakable. We had been the envy of our circle, with our tales of love lasting over 2 decades. Little did I know that a simple envelope would shatter that belief. It was a crisp autumn afternoon, the kind that paints the trees with a fiery hue, and the wind carries secrets. As I walked towards my home after a long day at work, I noticed a stark white envelope lying in our mailbox. No stamp, no address, just a simple handwritten mark on the front. Curiosity got the better of me, and I swiftly tore it open. The letter inside was typed, and the words sent chills down my spine. Open your eyes, Mark. Love can blind, but the truth can hurt even more. Laura isn't as faithful as you think. I felt my heart skip a beat. Laura, my Laura, cheating on me? No, it can't be. We had spent more than 20 years together, sharing not just a home, but dreams, hopes, secrets, and every imaginable emotion. This had to be a sick joke, but who would do such a thing? And why? I looked around. half expecting to see a pair of sneering eyes watching me from the shadows, enjoying the aftermath of their cruel prank. But the street was quiet, with just the rustling leaves and my racing heartbeat breaking the silence. I hid the letter in my briefcase, deciding not to share it with Laura just yet. Instead, I resolved to keep an eye on her, to watch for signs that could confirm or refute this terrible accusation. I believed in her, in us. Yet, there was this gnawing feeling at the pit of my stomach, like a worm eating away at the apple of our love. Over the next few days, everything seemed normal. Laura was her usual chirpy self, filling our home with her laughter and love. But then I noticed it. Robert, our close friend for years, a man I'd shared countless memories with, was around more than usual. At first, I dismissed it as mere coincidence, but the signs started to add up. The stolen glances they exchanged when they thought I wasn't looking, the hushed conversations that ceased when I entered a room, the secret smiles that hinted at shared secrets. I wanted to confront her, to ask her outright, but every time I mustered the courage, she'd look at me with those same eyes filled with love, and my doubts would melt away. But the envelope's message remained, lurking in the shadows, reminding me that sometimes, what seems too good to be true usually is. Days turned into weeks, and the gnawing suspicion inside me continued to grow. Each interaction between Laura and Robert became magnified, every whisper echoing loudly in my mind, every touch sending electric shocks down my spine. The world around me started to shift, with doubt clouding every beautiful memory we'd built. I had always been a man of action, so I decided to dive deeper. I began keeping track of Laura's movements, something I never imagined I'd ever do. I made notes of the times she'd take calls outside, her sudden late-night outings, and those weekend get-togethers with girlfriends that I'd never heard of. My journal started filling up with these observations, but it wasn't just notes. It was a testament to a crumbling foundation. One day, as I was making another entry, I stumbled upon a receipt from a fancy restaurant. The date was from one of those nights Laura had claimed to have a girls' night out. But what caught my attention was the total, far too high for just one person. My heart raced as I recalled her coming home that night, her makeup slightly smudged and her demeanor slightly off. With the receipt as my cue, I decided to dig deeper. I turned to technology for help. I installed a discreet tracking app on Laura's phone. The sinking feeling of betraying her trust was overwhelmed by the burning need to know the truth. And soon, the app gave me exactly what I was looking for. The locations she frequented matched Robert's. They were together at parks, cafes, and even, on one occasion, a secluded lakeside cabin. One evening, after another late night at work, I confronted Laura. Her face turned ashen as I listed my observations, my voice trembling, barely concealing the heartbreak. But to my surprise, she laughed. A forced, nervous laugh. She accused me of being paranoid, questioning my trust in our love and reminding me of our years together. "Mark," she said, looking straight into my eyes, "you're seeing shadows where there are none." Her gaslighting began to make me question everything. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe all this was just a figment of my overactive imagination. But then, a ray of hope, or perhaps despair, came from the most unexpected source. Robert's wife, Emily. She called me one morning, her voice trembling. She too had found signs, hints, and whispers of betrayal. She too had been dismissed, laughed at, and accused of being delusional. We were two souls, broken by the same deceit, seeking answers in a world that seemed to be shifting under our feet. Together, we decided to find undeniable proof and confront the liars that had torn our worlds apart. The hunt was on, and the stakes had never been higher. It was on one of those cool, foggy mornings that I found solace in our town's park. The mist clung to the trees, and the world felt muffled, like a scene straight out of a dream. As I walked down the familiar paths, each step seemed to echo with memories of happier times, back when doubt and heartbreak were foreign concepts. Amidst the silence, I heard a familiar voice call out to me. "Mark!" Turning around, I saw Jane, a mutual friend of Laura's and mine. With her sun-kissed hair and always comforting smile, Jane had been an ever-present figure in our lives. She'd been there through our highs and lows, our joys and sorrows. She approached, her eyes showing a hint of concern. "You look like you've seen better days," she remarked gently. We sat on a nearby bench, the cold metal, a stark contrast to the warmth of memories associated with this place. With a deep breath, I spilled everything. The letter, the tracking, the confrontation, and the alliance with Emily. As I narrated, I could see a mixture of sympathy and concern in Jane's eyes. When I finished, there was a heavy pause, the weight of my revelations hanging in the air. After what felt like an eternity, Jane finally spoke, her voice filled with a sadness I had never heard before. "Mark," she began hesitatingly, "there's something I think you should know." She revealed that she had seen Laura and Robert together on multiple occasions over the past few months. They had been at cafes, malls, and even at Jane's own birthday party, always finding corners to whisper, share fleeting touches, and exchange looks filled with a secret intimacy. Jane hadn't thought much of it initially, assuming it was just close friendship. But as the instances grew, her own suspicions began to mount. She even recalled a particular evening when she'd caught them sharing a much too intimate moment in her garden. Jane's revelations were like a hammer to my already fragile heart, but what she said next was even more shattering. Robert was known to be manipulative. In the past, he had charmed and deceived others, leaving a trail of broken relationships in his wake. His modus operandi was always the same: befriend, charm, and then destroy. Laura wasn't his first victim, and if left unchecked, she wouldn't be his last. I felt a whirlwind of emotions: anger, betrayal, sadness. But more than anything, I felt a sense of determination. With Jane's insights, Emily's support, and my own observations, I was building a case. A case not just against Robert, but against the shadows of doubt and deceit that had crept into my life. It was time to bring everything to light and confront the two people who had betrayed me the most. The storm was coming, and I was at its center. The following week, I meticulously planned the confrontation. With Jane and Emily's help, we arranged for a dinner at my house. The pretense was simple: a reunion of old friends, a gathering to reminisce and celebrate our shared history. Robert and Laura suspected nothing, or at least, they showed no signs of it. The evening started off pleasantly. The golden glow of the setting sun filtered through the curtains, and soft music played in the background. Laughter and chatter filled the room, creating an illusion of harmony. But beneath the surface, tension crackled like electricity. After dinner, as we moved to the living room for coffee, I took the lead. With a deep breath, I began. Tonight isn't just about memories or celebrating friendship. It's about truth and confronting the shadows that have crept into our lives. The room went silent. Laura's face turned pale, and Robert shifted uncomfortably. I continued, laying out all the evidence, from the letter to Jane's revelations, from the tracking results to the emotional pain that their deceit had inflicted on Emily and me. The atmosphere was thick with emotion. Accusations flew, voices raised, tears flowed, and for the first time, the mask of deception started to crumble. Robert, in a desperate bid to deflect blame, tried to paint himself as the victim. He spoke of loneliness, of feeling unappreciated, and how Laura was a beacon of hope in his desolate life. Laura, on the other hand, seemed lost and confused. She alternated between expressing remorse and accusing me of smothering her with my insecurities. She admitted to being swayed by Robert's charm, but also expressed her frustration at feeling taken for granted in our relationship. Jane and Emily were my pillars of support. They countered every lie, every deflection, reminding Robert and Laura of the pain they had caused, the trust they had broken, and the lives they had torn apart. Hours seemed to pass. The room was a battleground of emotions, and the scars of betrayal were laid bare for all to see. By the end, as the first light of dawn started to peek through, one thing was clear. relationships were forever altered. There was no going back, no healing the wounds. All that was left were the pieces of shattered trust and the daunting task of moving forward. As everyone left, the house was eerily silent, but it was also free from the chains of deceit. I sat alone, reflecting on the storm that had passed, feeling both drained and liberated. The confrontation had been painful, but it had also been necessary. The road ahead was uncertain, but at least now it was based on truth. In the wake of that tumultuous night, life took on an almost surreal quality. The town, once filled with fond memories, now bore the scars of betrayal at every turn. Whispers followed me wherever I went, some filled with sympathy, others with morbid curiosity. The first few days were a blur of pain and numbness. Emily and I leaned on each other, finding solace in shared anguish. Our meetings became frequent, and a unique bond began to form between us. It wasn't romantic, but rather an understanding, a mutual support system built on the ruins of deceit. Laura, overwhelmed by guilt, retreated from social life. She moved out, seeking solace in solitude, grappling with the consequences of her actions. From mutual friends, I learned she had started therapy, trying to find answers and perhaps a path to redemption. Robert, true to his manipulative nature, attempted to spin the story in his favor, painting himself as a misunderstood soul caught in the crossfire of emotions. But his charms had limits. With the truth out in the open, many began to see through his facade. He faced social ostracization and was even forced to step down from several community committees. About a month after the confrontation, I received a handwritten letter, its familiar script tugging at my heartstrings. It was from Laura. She wrote of her remorse, her realization of the depths of her betrayal, and the pain she had inflicted, not just on me, but on herself as well. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She merely wanted me to understand her side of the story, her loneliness in our relationship, her vulnerability, and how Robert had expertly exploited it. Reading the letter was an emotional roller coaster. Anger, pity, sadness, and love swirled inside me. While it didn't change the past or mend the broken bonds, it provided a perspective, a glimpse into the human frailty that led to the betrayal. The town, ever resilient, slowly started to heal. New stories replaced the old, and life resumed its pace. But for those of us at the heart of the storm, the journey was just beginning. Emily, finding strength in her pain, started a support group for individuals dealing with betrayal. It became her mission to help others navigate the treacherous waters of deceit and come out stronger. As for me, I turned to writing, pouring my emotions, my experiences, and my lessons into words. The journal that had once been a record of suspicion transformed into a memoir of healing. With Jane's encouragement, I even got it published. The book, titled Shadows of Deceit, became a local bestseller and resonated with many who had faced similar betrayals. The final chapter of my story was marked by a simple yet profound event. On the anniversary of the confrontation, I visited the same park where Jane had revealed the truth to me. Sitting on the familiar bench, I took out Laura's letter, reread it one last time, and then set it aflame. As the ashes floated away, carried by the gentle breeze, it symbolized my letting go, my release from the chains of the past, and my first step towards a future of healing and hope.